Serious, what is the creepiest or most unexplained thing that's happened to you that you still think and or wonder about to this day? Worked as a night auditor at an old hotel. It was around 2 AM and I get a phone call from the pool room, which is supposed to be closed. I pick up the phone and answer and all I hear is very heavy breathing. I hang up the phone and check the cameras and all the lights are on in the pool room. So I go down the hallway to kick whoever it is out. But as I get close to the glass door it is so cold I can see my breath. The door is completely fogged over and all the lights are out. I open the door and the light above me comes on because they are motion sensor lights. I'm looking around, but I don't see anything. Then the light comes on across the pool from me but nothing is there. Then every light in a path begins to light up around one side of the pool, as if something is walking towards me. I ran out of there so fast and locked myself in my manager's office and stayed until sunrise. But the worst was yet to come. I had played it off in my head as bugs causing the motion sensor lights to go off. I was telling my manager about my experience so he would get a good laugh. When I told him about the phone call from the pool he didn't laugh at all. He asked me if I was 100% positive the caller I'd said the pool room. And I said yeah. Then he told me there hasn't been a phone in the pool room for 30 years. I told him there was no way because that would be physically impossible. He told me to go look for myself. I looked and there was no phone. Complete and total minduck because I didn't believe in the supernatural at all before that. But to this day, no matter how many ways I try to rationalize it, I just can't. It is completely unexplainable. What the duck? Stayed over at a friend's house. In the middle of the night I woke up to what sounded like someone walking in the attic above us. Thought nothing more of it and went back to sleep. Wake up and on his ceiling were footprints in a perfect circle around his light bulb, as if someone was walking upside down around the light. Showed it to him and he just shrugged and said he thought his house was haunted, but it didn't bother him. That was 30 years ago and I still remember it like it was yesterday. I came home from work late at night and when I walked in the house, Amazon Alexa started naming off funeral homes unprompted. My family has tons of weird paranormal stuff, but the one I actively think about had nothing to do with ghosts or anything. My best friend vanished in like 4th or 5th grade. Her whole family just up and left without warning. Got a phone call from her months later saying she missed me and she was safe, but wasn't allowed to give any details. Someone came in the room and she had to hang up. To this day I have no freaking clue what happened. Every now and then I try to find her on social media. No luck. Yet. Driving down a dark highway in Alabama with my fiancé when two white orbs, about 3 to 5 inches in diameter, came through the upper right side of my windshield and out through the roof. I thought I lost my mind, but she looked equally as shocked as I did, and she described the exact same thing. We were still in a bit of a shock couple minutes later when we came upon and sub flipped upside down. A lone police officer waved us around the wreck. No one was in the car. We guessed the EMTs already came. We can't shake the feeling that maybe the two orbs were two people that died in the accident. It's very interesting you say that. I had an experience where I came upon a really bad 3-car accident early one morning before anyone had responded. It was so bad at first I thought it had to be some kind of staged accident, like they do 14s with drunk driving and show them the wreckage. There was debris all over the road, an engine block out of and sub and a guy, obviously dead in a car up against the side rail that was so compacted the backseat looked like it was filled with black garbage bags, but it was actually what was left of the rear end of the car. There was a girl laying face down with a horrible compound fracture to one arm that was already pooling blood. I knew not to try and move her, so I held her other hand, the one that wasn't fractured, and told her not to move, although there was no chance of that, and that there had been an accident, but help was on the way. By that time other people had stopped, and I could hear the sirens off in the distance. There are not words that can capture what happened next, and I struggle to tell this part, because I can't convey it nearly as incredible as it was. As I was holding her hand suddenly I felt what I can only describe as feeling like an electric ball about the size of a softball. It was very warm and tingling, kind of like when you touch your tongue to a battery, but way more intense. It pressed itself into my palm from hers with a solid pressure. I didn't see anything, but I felt something I've never felt before or since. It moved up my arm very deliberately, and I could feel it pass onto my shoulder up the side of my neck, and then rise into the air above my head, and it was gone. As it left, I suddenly not only felt completely calm, but knew that she had died, and there was nothing more I could do for her, but that somehow that was okay. I checked for her pulse and there was none. I calmly walked back to my car and that was it. I was actually in nursing school at the time, and although I traveled that road regularly, had left extra early that morning to get a jump on paperwork in preparation for a clinical that day, it made me question a lot of things. I struggled for a long time about whether or not I should contact the family and at the very least let them know their daughter hadn't been alone when she passed. I didn't think there was any way I could tell them what really happened, and even now writing this, I know it sounds crazy, but it's absolutely true. I've been around the dead and dying, and I've held their hands before, cleaned and dressed them, etc. This was the one and only time anything like this occurred. About 1973, I went to work, got out of the car, walked to the entrance, and on the way, saluted Warrant Officer Fadi because he was in uniform. He had always worn civilian clothes. He waved me on and said he'd be in a minute. I got to my office and expected to be the first one there because I always got there first as the lowest ranking guy in the office and had to make the coffee. I was surprised that the chief, a captain, and his senior sergeant were already in the office. The captain asked me to sit down at my desk. I thought I was in trouble. He said he had some bad news. Warrant Officer Fadi was killed in a head-on collision at 3 AM that morning. I protested that I had just seen him outside in the parking lot. The captain said he and the sergeant had identified the body just an hour earlier. One of many that stick with me. When I was in high school, I used to work at a movie theater. One night while doing a theater check, I stopped and looked at one of my managers and told her that we were going to get hit by lightning. Maybe 10 to 15 seconds later, lightning struck. We had to evacuate cause we lost power. Didn't get the power turned back until the next afternoon. When I was about 10 years old, I fell asleep under the covers. I woke in the middle of the night to find the covers off and neatly folded and placed just above my pillow. I'll never understand this. My best explanation is that I did it while sleepwalking. The problem is that I never folded any sheets and did not have muscle memory for it, and that I have no history of sleepwalking before or after this night. It isn't very interesting as I live a pretty chill life, but a month or so after my cat went missing, the doors started to open a little, like they would when she was around, and sometimes I felt cold patches on my body where she used to sleep, and the bed dipped. I'm not sure if ghosts are real or not, but I like to think it was her watching out for me. Me and my father have a pretty easygoing relationship. We love to joke with each other. One day, I saw him walk out of his room and go to the bathroom. I remember waving hello, and he waved back with a smile. Moments later, I see him walk out of his room again, and I tell him, "Dad, I literally just saw you walk to the bathroom a few seconds ago." As I mentioned the easygoing relationship, he must have thought I was joking and replied, "Yep, I have now unlocked teleportation abilities." Obviously, I knew that this was impossible for some reason, though I never talked about it. All I know is that I saw something go from one place to another and it interacted with me. Got home really late from a trip, about 2 in the morning. Had to park on a dimly lit side street to get to my place. As a single female in her late 20s, I call someone when I have to walk alone in the dark like that. I call my dad, who is in a different time zone and 3 hours behind. He knows the drill, and we're just chatting. As I'm walking up the hill to my condo building, there's a cluster of small trees and shrubs across the street, where a fence ends and a bank parking lot begins. 2 shady looking guys come out, one smoking. At first, I thought they were out for a smoke. They then started walking toward me, not toward another building or car, me. They then separate and one is on either side of me, which felt like I was being surrounded. As this happens, I tell my dad, which they can both hear from where they are, "I have 2 guys coming toward me. I think you need to call the police." As soon as that happened, they made a 90-degree turn and headed down the street. I still think about it often. I sometimes feel like I'm blowing things out of proportion. Especially when I consider that there were 2 nearby residential buildings that were heard screams, and that the threat of someone calling the police on the other end of the phone wasn't much of a threat, because who knows police response time. Then I go back to my gut feeling. The way they came out of the cluster of trees, made a beeline to me, then surrounded me in a creepy way that I can't explain. Like they were very close on an open road. I still don't know whether it was all in my head or not. But that was a terrifying experience. Since that time, I've parked in the bank lot that's well lit. I have to get up and move my car when they open at 8. But that scared some sense into me. Scared my poor dad as well. Years ago, when I was living alone, one day I fell ill. Started with diarrhea and then high temperature, cough, headache and body pain followed. I didn't take any medication on the first day, thinking I can just sleep it off. On the second day it got worse. I couldn't even get up. I was just lying in bed going in and out of sleep. By night I couldn't sleep because I slept all day, but I was still tired. So I was just staring at the blue light coming from my ack. Sleep paralysis or lucid dream, or whatever it was, kicked in. I couldn't move my body at all. Completely frozen. But my eyes were open, and I could see everything in my room. I could see people walking around me. They looked like some sort of futuristic doctors. They were operating on me, but not touching my body. Like there were some sort of puzzle pieces like a jigsaw puzzle floating over my body, and those doctors were cutting into those and moving them around. After a while they disappeared. I was able to move and got up from bed feeling a lot better. On the third day I was completely fine. Back to normal. No diarrhea, no cough, no high body temp, no headache and no body pain. Years ago now, my best friend and I were in a cafe just wasting time, and we saw a man watching us through a mirror hanging on a wall across from us. Something about this man was so bone chilling, so creepy. Our gut immediately kicked in, and we both looked at each other and acknowledged how creepy and off this man was. He continued to watch us, so we left the cafe and joked about on our walk home. We were about 16 and just brushed it off. About a week later this man comes into my work. His face and whole presence is unforgettable. I texted my best friend and informed her that he was at my work, yet again, staring at me without ever looking away. He was pretending to browse a store's inventory, but obviously intended on not buying anything. He stared and stared. I told a co-worker and walked away for a bit. Strange, but small community and you see people everywhere. Side note, both my best friend and I have lived in this community for most our lives and had never seen this man. Alright, fast forward to a few weeks later, and we are at a store late evening in a completely different part of our huge city. We are browsing, and the man is there, at this shop that we hardly visit, late, and he was there. He walks in the downstairs entrance and looks directly up at us. As we were looking over the upstairs railing, we nervously giggle and shout profanities. In disbelief, this really off-putting man is here. It was crazy. We told our other friends we were with, and we immediately left. A little later he returned to my place of work, spooking me just as much as he did the first time I saw him. My co-worker and manager tell me to go upstairs and pretend to do something, to not be around him. He immediately follows me upstairs, and then my manager follows him. As he is aware of the situation and my strange sightings of this man, he hastily walks up to the desk I was behind, and before my manager can pull him away from me and ask him to leave the store, he looks right at me and says, "Can I ask you something? Do I make you uncomfortable?" I don't know what it was, but something took over my body and I filled with dread and fear and immediately started crying. I have never had anything like this happen to me. This man had never talked to me before. Just look at my friend and I really intently. My manager tells him he needs to go now and never come back. The thing is, everyone immediately picked up on the very strange, creepy, uncomfortable energy he put out. My co-worker had no idea what he looked like, as I had never explained, and he immediately pointed him out when he entered our work and asked if that was him. Everyone agreed something was very, very off. Our woman asked that I be walked to my car if I was getting off work late. From that point on, I wish I could convey with better and more descriptive words what kind of feeling this man put off my best friend, and I still discuss it. It was 9 years ago. When I was coming back from my ex's girlfriend at the time house, I saw something at least 7 foot tall in the woods, and I stopped to look, but it took off. The more I researched it, the more it fit the description of a skinwalker. One of my friends has always been a bit weird. For say, he would always joke about killing people or hurting someone. I never really thought anything of it, so yeah. A couple years later somebody was shot at a warehouse area near my house by a kid my age. It freaked me out to know that a kid with gun was running around, but I didn't think of my friend. One day he asked if I wanted to hang out, and I said sure. He came to my house after running errands and had some dark spots on the back of his shirt. Later that night the news said that a man had been stabbed 12 times with a knife, and that's when I started to suspect something. We were hanging out at his house, and I was never allowed to go in his room, but one day he went to go grab food and I went exploring. There was a huge board on the wall with 4 or 5 pictures of people on it, and 2 of them had X's over them. I knew immediately my friend had been killing people. I reported him to the police, and yeah, he's in jail now. We live in a small town, so you'll probably never hear of this. That's my story. I once was minding my own business in the bathroom, not on the toilet or anything, when I suddenly went blind. Fell over and my head hit the side of the tub. I couldn't feel it, but I sure as shit heard it. Woo-wang, I thought I died. I recovered like immediately, and nothing like that has happened to me before that or since then. Teenagers playing in the snow with friends building tunnels behind parents' house. There were 5 of us. About dusk, as we were playing, some object with multicolored lights flew in and hovered off to our north about 50 feet away. I ran on the porch and called for my mother. As I waited I looked over the railing and we all were just froze looking. What seemed like 5 minutes and no mom. It abruptly flew off as I went to call again for my mom. She called to me that she isn't going to come back and look if we were going to hide again. We hadn't hidden, we were there, standing out in the open. No one talked about it after, but it is burned in my memory 25 years later. One of my best friends died when I was a freshman in high school. He had aplastic anemia. Anyhow, it was very difficult to get into schoolwork right after his death. Had a test in English a couple weeks later that I honestly did not study for. I somehow got a 100% on the test. I still believe he guided me through it. Thanks man. See you on the other side. This wasn't creepy but very strange. So I came home from school one day and I was unpacking my bag. I accidentally dropped a sandwich that I hadn't eaten earlier out from my bag, and when I bent down to get it, it was gone. I looked all over that floor and no sandwich. It just disappeared into thin air. To this day I believe that sandwich went to the underworld. Please subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.